Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. Today, I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone is a special guest because they took their time to be on my show. I'm joined by Alex Powell. Now, working on this new season of my podcast, I'm going to start doing a little bit better introductions of my guests. That was some good feedback from my father-in-law. So I met this young man through the podcasting world. He graduated in 2019, after the first year I started. But we just didn't overlap. But then coincidentally, the world of podcasting brought us together.
Yeah.
He has an amazing show called After the Sunset. It's a dope podcast. He's doing this thing. And then we've actually collaborated in just random ways through this podcast world. We did the event for the Alexandria Library about how to get into podcasting. And he's been super consistent with his show. But before we get into this episode, Alex, give the listeners a little bit more beyond you just being a podcaster, a little bit of some background about you.
Well, yeah, graduated in 2019. Since then, been working. I currently work for the international headquarters of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, which is funny because I never thought that I would be in that space that deeply. But I got that opportunity, been running with it. I originally had started in HR, but COVID kind of took that situation away. So I volunteer regularly. We've been running these food drives at McPherson Square for the homeless population, just giving away sandwiches. We've given away over 200 McDonald's cheeseburgers, and then we just gave away 120 handmade sandwiches, ham, turkey, all that type of stuff, waters, hand sanitizer, stuff like that. And that's not even with like the fraternity. That's just kind of us trying to give back, especially with COVID. When I had originally lost my job, I had started working with this organization called United Communities, and they gave me the opportunity to kind of really help run these food drives with Fairfax County.
Yeah.
And through that, I kind of really started to see the benefit of like the nonprofit space and giving back and, just really being out in the community and helping people that, yes, I lost my job with COVID, but I was able to kind of escape a lot of the effects. So just to see how people were struggling for the bare essentials, fruits, vegetables, water, bread, milk, stuff like that. So, this year has definitely changed my life, but then also, the impact that you kind of have on the world is great to see that I can do a lot more than even what I was doing in school or doing before that. So
That's amazing. So obviously doing big things. United Community, that's the one off Gum Springs, correct?
it's actually off of
Forston Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gum Springs. That's one way I grew up. So I
Yeah.
Vernon. So that's really dope that you're doing that. And so I go back and forth with my listeners, and we were thinking about a topic, but our great minds think alike, and we talked about community building, and I think that's really powerful in this time, particularly because I think one of the main things that people are yearning for is social connection, a sense of community, right? But let's put our hats on before COVID, and just think about what does community mean to you?
Community is a bunch of things. I think the biggest thing is a place that you can kind of call home outside of your immediate household. That place where you can kind of be free, be yourself, and have an atmosphere of acceptance. And then it's also a place that really uplifts you and leaves room for redemption. I think a lot of the times in a lot of the community spaces that we have now, you can kind of exist, but you have to exist a certain way or else you're going to be exiled, and there's no room to kind of grow. There's no room to, step out of a place of ignorance. And I think that that's kind of hindered community as a whole as time has kind of gone on. So
And so I heard a lot of things. I hear acceptance.
Hmm.
I hear acceptance and redemption, but I hear, being your authentic self, all
Hmm.
those different things. There's a lot of themes in that. And obviously I think a lot of that intertwines with well-being, right? That
Hmm.
there's a innate sense that all people want to feel like they belong to something bigger than themselves, right?
Yeah.
That's what, community is, right? And so I think we're both in multiple different communities that give us a sense of purpose, belonging. It's something bigger than ourselves. So maybe in three phases, can you talk about, like, and you did share one post COVID, but can you share like two examples of a space similar to that where it's, bigger than yourself? And then maybe, two of those before COVID.
Hmm.
And then that third one is, I think, just reiterate how most recently you've been using, your food drives and stuff to build
Hmm.
community during COVID. But, give the listeners like two examples what you think are some good, for you, were good community spaces.
Well, pre-COVID, I can honestly say I was way more focused on work
Yeah,
and
work
and
community. Yeah.
and and kind of putting my time into only trying to gain what I needed or felt like I needed. Um, so it was interesting because when I was in school and everything else like that, you know, community service and giving back and stuff like
Mhm.
that was stuff that kind of always came easy to me. So when you get out of school, you kind of think, oh yeah, I'm gonna have more time on my hands. I'm gonna be able to do this. I'm gonna be able to do
Mhm.
that. But I got so caught up with work and trying to move out and trying to do this and do that that you really don't start giving back. So when everything
Mhm.
kind of stopped, going back to that roots of really just getting back out into the community, um, and not just with the food drives, like also taking a step and looking at some of my younger cousins who had just started school, and I remember how isolating that felt.
Mhm.
Where you're in this brand new place, it's all these people that you don't know, and you have these classes that are 10 times harder than anything that you're used to. And my youngest cousin, who came down for Christmas, the first thing he told me when I gave him that first call during the semester was, damn, I thought people forgot about me. And you start to
Oh,
really,
like people, like he thought his home forgot about him.
forgot about him,
Yeah,
you
because he's in
know.
a new space, right? New
Yeah.
place.
So and people kind of give you that space to kind of go off and experience and learn and all that type of stuff, but it's always nice to have that place to check in. It's always nice to kind of know that, hey, this is where I come from, and these are the people who truly have my best interest at heart. So I have the wherewithal to kind of know that when I'm in these spaces, these are the atmosphere of people that I should look for. So really just kind of looking back down the line and looking at the people who are coming after me, and paying more attention. And I also think that with COVID and the elderly population seeing the biggest effect, like that also made me kind of look at the older generations and actually be more than just, we don't need y'all, like we're gonna figure it out, like, nah, like trying to connect, trying to extend those olive branches, sit in those rooms and kind of like hear what they're trying to pass down, and stuff like that. So a lot of it, yes, came through giving back, but a lot of it also just came from being open to new perspectives that are just completely outside of my own.
Yeah, and so, and then some of those real communities that you belong to in school,
Mhm.
and we talked about this online, was, like you were involved in sports.
Yeah.
That was one community space.
Hmm.
You were involved in a fraternity.
Yeah.
That was one space. And then
Hmm.
just maybe, I guess, just being a student. And so what was some ways that in those different pockets, the fraternity, your
Hmm.
school, and I don't
Hmm.
know, let's say Black
Well,
Mason, that you felt some of those parts of growth and
hmm,
some of those things of feeling actually included,
yeah, I
and why
mean,
those were important?
I think the sports aspect is probably the biggest out of all three of those, just simply because when
Mm-hmm.
you're on a team, you have a responsibility to not only yourself, but to everybody. And every little thing that you can do um, will affect the entire team, and kind of learning that early on with sports was definitely allowed me to think about others. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I started stepping into these other realms, like Greek life and my fraternity, like that was something that gave me a sense of responsibility, more so in terms of what image can kind of do,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping a authentic and genuine image can oftentimes give you better results than even trying to keep a good image or a positive image at times. and just understanding what it really means to be a leader, and how, you know, leadership is not just do what I say.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Speak it.
yeah, and it becomes more of that thing where your impact and the realm of understanding that you have to create for other people, and the atmosphere that you have to give others to empower themselves. You know, you might see certain things going on, or you might feel as if certain dynamics aren't necessarily the best, and you want to make that change, but it's the people around you who can actually help you make that change. And for me, it was just learning how to get the people around you who aren't necessarily the leaders, but they're the people who are kind of making up the conglomerates of the community, to still feel like they have the same energy, mindset, and so on and so forth as I do, to do what they need to do. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
And that was pretty much the biggest thing out of that. And then in terms of the black community, as it came to Mason, even from an alumni perspective, you know, just realizing that, you know, leaving school and everything, it's a very freeing thing. It's a very
mhm.
stress relieving thing,
Yes.
but there's still others going through exactly what you were going through. There's still those times where you're
Hmm.
lost. There's still
Yeah.
those times where you're just trying to figure it out. Did I make the right choices? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? So on and so forth. And it's even more of a more of a responsibility to me now to really come back and, you know, extend my hand and extend the things that I've learned in these past year and a half of being out to, you know, the students who are coming after me, whether it's
Mhm.
fraternity brothers or just students that I knew, you know, who are thinking about entering. Maybe it's a podcast room, or maybe it's, you
Yeah.
know, they want to create something or start a business or whatever. Like, eh, you owe it to them to also look back down the road and say, hey, like, I have something to offer. I can't give you all the answers, but I can at least be here for you, because I know these are the questions I had, and I know you're probably dealing with the same thing.
Yeah, you spoke it. And I think some of the things, and I love that this is just a freestyle conversation, but the touching points is that,
Hmm.
one of the things that and this is a total pivot, was that with all these different communities, like when you
Hmm.
leave one and go to a new one,
Hmm.
it feels good to feel like you're still pulled in some way.
Yeah.
And it kind of brings back to your cousin's story, right? Like he left home and went to college, and having someone from home check in with him makes him feel good.
Yeah.
And I it kind of drew that connection to me, is like that you left college, right? You're done,
Hmm.
you're graduated, but there's still a connection. Like as an alum, when someone reaches out to you, like, "Oh, dang, I
Hmm.
thought you forgot about me." Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna use that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
use that
Yeah.
line, because
Hmm.
there's been lots of times. I don't know if it's also COVID,
Hmm.
where we still want to feel connected, and
Hmm.
when someone in a group or community reaches out to you, it
Hmm.
still makes you feel connected. For instance, like let's say you're not active in your fraternity as much,
Hmm.
someone reaches out to you from the fraternity, say,
Hmm.
"Hey, how you doing?" Dang, I
Hmm.
thought the fraternity forgot about me.
Hmm.
Or I'm an alum, and someone calls you from the school. Wow, I, I graduated years ago, but the
Hmm.
school still feels connected to me.
Hmm.
So I love that. I love that mindset. So, but then on the flip side, I think it still takes some proactiveness, right? Like
Hmm.
for instance, like maybe your cousin could have called home,
Hmm.
right, to get which
Hmm.
So what are some of your thoughts on that? Like when you're in a new space, like what are some
Hmm.
strategies that you think of that it's really good to still feel plugged in?
Um, I think that in terms of feeling plugged in, it it's hard, and I try not to put that onus on the people who
Hmm.
are going through it, because,
Hmm.
like, I I kind of look at it from the standpoint of, I've been through it, and I know how hard it is to kind of get to that space where you feel like you can be comfortable enough to ask for help. You know, and I feel like whether it's young men or young women, there always seems to be that personal or interpersonal dilemma of, I can do it myself, I can handle it myself, so on and so forth. So I try to more so put the connection factor on the people who kind of have gotten through it already, because I feel like we have more of
Hmm.
the mental capacity to kind of understand of, this is what is important when it's all said and done. It's important to reach back out. It's
Hmm.
important to sign up for those newsletter emails, even though they're going to flood your inbox with a
Yeah.
whole bunch of stuff that you don't want to read. It's important to go back out to these events and kind of show your face, and not necessarily be in a position of like trying to take control or dictate what's happening, but just letting them know that, hey, you have a certain level of support. And for me, that's kind of been my biggest thing. Like, take every week, I use Sundays as my days of reflection, and try to at least reach out to the people in the past week who have really impacted my life, and tell them that, like, you've done something for me. And even that exercise you gave me,
Yeah.
with like sharing these positive things about people, so many people like reacted to that. And
Yes.
I didn't realize that that was going to be such a big thing. But what I got from that was, you know, a lot of people go through life and don't necessarily hear the things that they need to hear. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily get the thank yous. They don't necessarily get the I love yous. They don't necessarily get the I care about yous. So the simple fact that you can react to something and somebody takes 5 minutes and just thinks about what has my experience been with you, and then share that,
Mm.
it's almost like hitting the reset button on a person and
Yeah.
just giving
Yeah.
them that boost of
Yeah.
energy to take the positives with them, as well as taking some of the negatives with them. So I put more of the onus on, us who have
Yeah.
gotten through it, to really be there, be present. You don't even have to be the most vocal when you're there. It's just letting people know you can be a constant in their life. you know
I
they
love that, and what I love most that you said about that too, and it's about the ownership. And
Mhm,
this is me putting my old hat on. Is that
mhm,
there should be a little bit more responsibility on alum or someone that's the pro fight, or
mhm,
we like mentor,
mhm,
all the people that you said. There's a little bit more onus on them
mhm,
to guide, rather than, because it takes a lot of initiative for someone to take the courage to like reach up, or
mhm, mhm,
like, it's really, they always talk about like, how do I find a mentor and all that
mhm.
stuff, right? And you always have people, like, you give them tips and strategies, and we always really focus a lot on the mentee reaching out and
Yeah.
asking for, oh, send your email and say, can I set
Mhm,
up coffee and stuff. But we don't often put the onus on the mentor to
mhm.
reach back down,
Yeah.
or say, I'm good at this, maybe I can offer it to someone, or
Mhm,
take someone under my wing.
mhm,
And I love that you reframe that, because I don't think a lot of people, especially in regards to mentorship, I
mhm.
don't think a lot of people even know they need a mentor. Like, let's
Yeah.
be real, like, they don't know.
Yeah.
But then, if someone that's been through the life is like, yo,
Mhm,
definitely, I know what it's like to want to do something and then have no one to
mhm.
reach up to.
Yeah.
So I know this experience. I should
Mhm.
offer, hey, I could be a mentor to you, like.
Yeah.
And so I think that I like that. I like that power shift. I like
Mhm,
that. I like that assertiveness, where, I mean, definitely want someone to be assertive
mhm,
and reach out when they need help, but also be
mhm,
more empathetic, in the sense that maybe some people, one, don't know
mhm.
how to do it,
Yeah.
or scared, or never done it
Mhm,
before. And two, you're right, like, they might be going through a lot of experiences
mhm,
that, now that you look in hindsight, it's like, oh, that's not that hard,
mhm.
because I lived through it. But
Yeah.
in that moment, it was hard. Like,
Yeah.
college for me, I'm like, y'all, there's your easy. Like, wait till you have two kids. Wait till y'all, like, I lived
Yeah.
through it. Like, I can
Mhm,
go through it and say I lived through it. But in my bubble, that was hard.
mhm,
Like, that was my lens. When you're
mhm.
going through it, it wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
That's the empathy building.
Yeah. And I mean, we often talk about that even in relation to our organization, of how we're going to get younger people to see the benefit, get people to see that, they can do more, they can aspire for more, and everything else like that. But it's funny, um, because when they talk about leadership, they talk about all these qualities of, we want somebody who could be the president of the organization one day. We want somebody who could lead in this region or that region or something like that. But what you rarely hear in a lot of these conversations is, okay, I can develop you for what I want you to be in the future. But when we're talking about the community, we have to look at, a lot of the times, what is the community that students are in right now, and how do you lead in that community? How do I balance the act of, yes, my peers see me as a leader, but they also see me as a peer. So at the end of the day, they don't really want to come to me as if I'm their parent, but they want to come to me as somebody who can speak for them in the rooms that they've been invited to, because they've achieved or attained that title of a leader in some way, shape, or form, whether that's president of an organization, whether that's you sit on the student funding board, whatever it is. It's just, you have that area. You're the person I can go to ask that question. So now I'm expecting you to go to these people and get my question answered. But very rarely do we look at the true dynamics of what those communities are. We kind of just think leadership is this blanketed thing, and it's not. It's something that's very fluid and very it changes a lot. It changes because how you lead is really dependent on who you're leading. If you're leading
Okay,
a bunch of
you try to drop the truth. I was thinking about that. Yeah.
yeah,
Like who? Yeah, like you have to like know to read the room.
mm-hmm.
I think also I think that it's funny is that a lot of people don't see themselves as leaders, especially in communities.
Yeah.
So for instance, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about communities and being
Mm-hmm.
like maybe you're just you got a group of friends
Mm-hmm.
and that's your community, your group of friends,
Mm-hmm.
and you just want to get people together. So you
Yeah.
organize the parties or
Mm-hmm.
the get-togethers, or you always initiate group texts.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, in your mind, you're like, man, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just trying to get around. I'm just trying to be around my friends.
Yeah.
But in real reality, you're a leader.
Mm-hmm.
If you would have said to that person, like, oh, from an outside fishbowl, when I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
at that dynamic, as you said, that dynamics, you're the
Mm-hmm.
leader of this group. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I was just trying to get people to do stuff and hang out
Yeah.
with me. And so I think during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
for me particularly,
Mm-hmm.
people, and this is me being totally transparent, people have viewed me as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
but when I really boil it down to, I was just trying to corral people, like I wanted, like I literally wanted to connect with other black males, black male faculty and staff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just set up Zooms,
yeah,
and I don't think that's leadership, but it could be. I what I'm trying to say is that dynamic that you just brought up was
mm-hmm.
that a lot of amongst your peers, when it's almost that same situation when
mm-hmm.
you're in the experience
mm-hmm.
and you're a doer.
Mm-hmm.
You don't view that as leadership. You're just like,
yeah,
I'm just doing. But from the outside, someone might be like, oh, you're
mm-hmm.
a leader.
Because your intentions are pure. And I think that most of the time when the best leaders are the leaders who, they lead based off of their intentions. They're not leading because somebody put themselves with the title or the view of, oh, you're the leader, you're the person in charge, or anything else like that. So when you say, hey, I'm coming, I wanted to bring my friends together, so I did the work to bring my friends together. That's literally you speaking from the heart and saying, this is what I wanted, so I did the things that I needed to get done. Yeah. But your friends look at that gesture and say, hey, he did something that we might have had those same feelings, we just never acted upon it. That's what sets the dynamics apart. And I think, because the same way you said, I struggle with it a lot too, where people will say, oh, like, you have a knack for leading, you have a knack for doing this, you have a knack for doing that. And I'm like, no, I just like to speak up about certain things. Like,
yeah. There's like those, yes, I love that. Yeah, like I said that to you. Like I was like, I remember you spoke up in a room. I was like, oh, I text you immediately. I was like, man, that was some guts right there. You're like, oh, I just feel like saying something.
Because that's really how you look at it. Like, you don't necessarily look at it from the standpoint of, oh, this is this person and that person or anything else like that. Yeah. At least for me, I look deep about other things. I don't look deep about that. So for me, it's kind of just like, okay, well, we're already in this room. We're already in this space. We've already created the atmosphere to kind of say what it is that we want to get accomplished. So you've already given me the go ahead. Whether or not everybody else is going to take it, I've chosen to kind of take it. But then at the same time, I've also kind of learned to balance that, because then you kind of have to learn, okay, well, tone versus delivery and all these other things that I had to fumble through to kind of get to the point where I could articulate myself in a productive manner. But it like I said, it really comes from your intentions. I personally believe that most leaders, or the people who have that calling to lead, don't necessarily do it from a standpoint of they want something out of it other than the goal that they're chasing. So if I want to bring people together and I brought people together, I got what I was after. What other people see it as is great for them, but that's their perception. I can only live in what I was trying to get to.
I love it. I think also like I love that, and I'm gonna use that the keywords like some leaders are led by their intentions and led by their purpose, or just led by what they're interested in, right? And they chase that, and then people corral around them. So for instance, if you're someone that doesn't like being by yourselves and you want to be social and you just like you want to corral people in a sense of because I want to build cohesion and community and fellowship, that was my focus was fellowship, that then naturally people gravitate to it if it's a good ideal. And so I think that's spoke to that.
Yeah, because I think that the the funny part about it is, in a sense, what you're saying to everybody else is, I'm willing to live with the consequences of this not working.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like if I'm gonna try to get people together, I'm willing to live with the fact that everybody could tell me no. You know what I'm saying? If I'm trying to throw a party, I'm living with the fact that nobody will show up. But I'm trying. Like I'm literally trying. If I organize a community event and I go out there and it's just me, I'm still gonna do it on those days. If I post a podcast episode and it only gets one listen, I'm still doing it because eventually somebody who may even want to do it or thinks to do it, they can find courage in the fact that they saw you do it. Like when I was an RA on campus, I did not think that anybody was watching the fact that I was an RA on campus at all. You know what I'm saying? I had always gotten good reviews from, you know, my superiors and everything else like that. So I was like, okay, at least I know I'm not messing up the job. But I remember when I had first gone back to like a party on campus and somebody stopped me and was like, yo, I'm like, what's up? He was like, you were my RA. And now I'm an RA. And I was like, whoa, like that's so weird because you don't even look at it from the standpoint of people are really watching your actions. But they are. And it's a good thing because if you can move in the right manner and not necessarily make anybody feel a way as you're moving, you can inspire somebody to take that step, send that application, whatever it is, start their own like whatever it is, you can really inspire people. So that's kind of how I look at it, without necessarily going in trying to inspire anybody. I just do it.
I definitely, I think that's where we're kindred too. Is like definitely, particularly with this podcast, I was going to do this regardless. Like that's what I was going to do this regardless. Maybe I want to get better for myself or make it sound better or whatnot, but I'm still going to drop these episodes and slowly build momentum and hype myself and plug myself. And then since additionally build a community around podcasting and reach out to other Black podcasters or young podcasters or you and Jermaine and all these and just collaborate. And I think, I really, we boil down to it in regards to that community part is that, maybe someone initiates, but then you get enough of maybe a system going where you don't have to do all the work eventually, right? I think that's a good leader too. A good leader maybe might be the person that starts it and gets that first push, but you want to, I guess, create a space where other people can start contributing and kind of take off a little bit of the weight on you, right?
And
the organism, the system takes a life of its own.
I think I agree with that 100%. And I also think that, the good leader also creates a space for the people who come after him to surpass him or her. You know what I'm saying? And with that, you might have gone through all these pitfalls, all of these struggles and everything else like that, which makes it easier for the next person to avoid some of the mistakes and the next person to avoid those mistakes. And, I think a lot of the times it also kind of comes into that aspect of, they call it like gatekeeping and, things that can kind of hinder community and hinder, growth. And I think that just comes from a place of, when you start to talk about things like success and, people's aspirations and goals and everything else like that, like it's hard on anybody who's in a leadership perspective to not necessarily see the fruits of their labor come through. But I remember one of my first training seminars, and the leader of the training was like, if you're somebody who's trying to lead and you also want the spoils that come after it, stop trying to lead, because you might not live long enough to actually see it through, And then she brought up she brought up Malcolm X, she brought up Martin Luther King, she brought up all these people who might have fought for something that they truly, truly believed in, but they don't know what the world's like now. They were either unfortunately killed or died of old age or whatever, and they didn't necessarily get to see the day that we could.
They don't see it. They don't see it.
See it. And that was one of the sentiments that kind of stuck with me a long time. Like, you might not see it. You might not see your impact. You might not necessarily get to see, you know, the light at the end of the
thrive.
tunnel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might not even see the community thrive. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
let's boil it down to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just even our Greek for, you know, our
Mm-hmm.
fraternities and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
our founders, I think they just wanted a community space on their
Yeah.
campus. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't see where it is now and
Mm-mm.
how far across the country it is. That's
Mm-mm.
one example. And I think you did another example, like, you know, let's say you start a student org and
Mm-hmm.
you just literally kicked it off. But I bet you sure, I'm pretty sure the first BS, you know, the person that started BSA or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
they don't see where it is, what it became.
Yeah.
They don't see it. They're
Mm-hmm.
just hoping that they get enough people to join, you know,
Yes.
like you know, like the first year, you know, they only worried about their first year.
Yeah.
They're not going to see
Mm-hmm.
it 10 times later. I remember I was in a group called Brothers of a New Direction
Mm-hmm.
at JMU. It's called Bond. And it's a group for Black men, but it's similar to collegiate Black men, where you know the next semester, you know, you join Bond, and then the next semester is Kappa Alpha Kappa Alpha. You know, like you know, it's you know,
Yeah.
but it's a group, right? Whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But point is, people would come back and be like, "Yo, this." You know, they're still Bond. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like they're surprised that this thing was still going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was very curious, like this is, you know, dating myself about 12 years
Mm-hmm.
later from undergrad for me. It's
Mm-hmm.
still going on. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure the first person that started Bond did not believe it was still going to go on as a
Yeah.
registered student organization. They're not
Mm-hmm.
going to see this. They never saw it. They're
Mm-hmm.
long gone from the halls of JMU.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right. You want to start something and you just hope that it rides out, and maybe you keep on passing it down, and you just got to hope for the best that the thing that you started,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of you being present,
Mm-hmm.
can take a life of its own. That community, for sure.
I mean, I feel like that's the true testament of it taking a life of its own, you know, because it's going to, like, you start a podcast. You, like, even with mine, I talked about it the first time. I thought I was only supposed to do 10 episodes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's as far as
yeah.
I wanted to go. That's as far as I thought about it. But then you have it mapped out and you say, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to be done. And then you get the first person to comment and they're like, yo, well, what do you think about this? Or somebody listens and they challenge your ideas, or you drop a snippet and you realize that didn't really do what I thought it did. But then the next time you tweak it a little bit and you start to see a different result. Like, all these things start to really channel in your mind of, oh, this could be something more. This could be something greater. This could be something that people attach onto. And then one of the biggest things for me was realizing that the people who listen the most are the people in your circle. So when they're listening and they're tapping in and they get to kind of hear those perspectives, or they get to kind of have that moment to connect with you on a level that they don't necessarily get to sit down for every conversation that you have, but they can text you or call you and be like, bro, I listen, like, and you talked about this, that, and third, and it made me look at my own relationship, or it made me look at finances different, or it made me take a better outlook just because I was in a rough place. Like, you start to realize that it's deeper than just what you thought it would be. It's deeper than just a good idea you had, you know, and that's the beauty about crafting a community and really allowing yourself to not overextend in what the community means. You let the people do that. You let the people who come and exist with you be like, you know what, this is what we're going to make it, you know, and you kind of just direct it to make sure, like, okay, I can agree with the certain ideologies that are coming, but here's the foundation. You know, we're going to stand for this. We're going to move like this. We're going to accept people a certain way. And then hopefully you've left enough room for the next person to understand what you were trying to do, understand the pitfalls, and then make it a little bit better.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
And that's really the funnest part, though. Like, I'm excited when I think about what comes after me. You know,
well, I mean, I definitely, when I say I agree with that, but I also agree with that in the sense that I tangibly going to see it with my boys. So, I mean, that's definitely like that living embodiment of that is like, I think about that quite often, is impact of, I think of two impacts, right? Like, I think of a lot of Black faculty and staff at JMU that were like the guys, like Art Dean or Byron Bullock. Art Dean is still at JMU. Shout out to him. like when you think of Black Mason and you think of him, like I don't think he realized how many young Black males he impacted.
Mm-hmm.
It's way beyond him. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I think like they were thinking about renaming you know, some of the Confederate buildings, you know, at JMU.
Mm-hmm.
And one person proposed, why don't we name one after Byron Bullock? I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yo, that's nutty. Like you
Yeah.
think about that, that's legacy, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
like someone randomly was like, yeah, and then mad people was like in this, you know, Black alumni chapter for JMU. A lot of people were, yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's impact. Like people years later, these are like people that were like class of 90 were like dropping his name. And I was like, wow, that's exactly that was a testament to that. Like I don't think he ever foresaw, he was just doing his job and supporting people. I don't think he never thought in the year 2020, 30 years later, and you know, he's been good and retired or whatever, but people still hold him in high esteem and want to celebrate what he did and how impactful he was. But then additionally, I think that I think a lot for fathers, I think the best wish for a father is that, yes, I definitely will pass away one day. The only thing I can really leave my kids, I mean, I can leave them some money and stuff, but I can also leave them the Wilkerson name. Like that they go out and say, oh, you Wilkerson's boy? And that's going to mean something, you know, they can use that. And two, like every dad in the, you know, every good dad, you know, I ain't no deadbeats, but even a deadbeat dad would be like, oh, I hope my kids is better than me because I wasn't even around. But I think every dad would say, like, if you say, like, you know, what do you hope or fear? One is that my kids don't turn out good. That's their fear. What they hope is that they turn out better than me. Every single dad, every dad will say that. Like, and you say that too. We'll take it away and run. If they're good at, you know, if I was good at sports, I hope my son is 10 times better.
10 times better, yeah.
Yeah. And like, you know, I you know, you make it to the league or something. If you know, if I was smart and I had that chance to get like a scholarship, I hope he's a genius. Like, you just want your kids to be better than you in everything, every facet.
I agree. And I mean, that's something that I look at a lot. And I think realizing the impact of like fatherhood and having that person in your life that can kind of provide you that structure from the ground, from the start to finish. You know, when I think about my dad lost his dad when he was 13.
My father did too. Actually,
so
that's crazy.
It's like when I look at, you know, where my dad has kind of come and, you know, having 3 sons and everything else like that, I often think of like, well, wow, as of right now, I've already had my dad 11 years longer than he had his. So all the things that I can share with him and all the things that I can create now, he never got that. You know what I'm saying? So those are the things that kind of make me look at, you know, older generations and kind of the sacrifices that you've made for us and have that appreciation. Like, damn, like I wouldn't know what to do. Like I wouldn't know what to do versus somebody who loses their father in a different country, comes to this country and makes a way and can't even say, hey, look, this is what I did.
Yeah.
But
my father was the same. My father lost his father very young and he didn't have the blueprint as much. Now I have a little bit of a blueprint. And honestly, I'll be totally transparent. I catch myself using the same mannerisms or random sayings as my father. And like what? I'd be saying like, dang, I just sound like my dad just now. But I think that you're right. Like, I think, and this can go to the leadership, to father, to all that, is that I definitely think that, and as I learned longer, is that a lot of leaders didn't see themselves as leaders until they wake up one day. Similar to me, like a lot of people don't wake up and say, oh, I'm a dad. Wow. What did my life turn into? I'm a dad. A lot of people don't see them get to that point. And then a lot of people, I think, leaders or fathers or whatever, they're literally just living blueprints for people. Yeah. Whether you know it or not. Yeah. Like whether I acknowledge it or not, my kids watch me. Whether you knew it or not, people watch you as an RA. Yeah. And so I think, I don't know, I think, not to say it's generic, but there was a term that everyone is a leader. And
I agree. I agree. And it's just how you empower them. You know, it's how you empower them. One of my favorite sayings is everybody is fighting a battle that you can't recognize. So walk beside them, not behind them. you know. And I love that quote so much because it allows me to, one, not hold envy in my heart for people, like people going through stuff that I never would have thought of. Not like literally just wouldn't, it doesn't cross my mind. So when I started to become aware of those things and started to even hear some of those stories, you get to really take a step back and say, okay, I may have my own anxieties or troubles or this, but I don't have to deal with that. So let me let me figure out a way how we can coexist with the simple fact that I have my own walk of life, you have your own walk of life, but we don't have to be in that back and forth. We don't have to be the crabs in the barrel, but we could just run around this circle and run together, you know. And that was something that I heard um, from a YouTuber I used to watch when I was a kid. Shout out Kane Carter, Hot Damn I Rock. Like I used to watch his videos and just like he used to talk about like girls and comedy sketches and all that type of stuff. And then his content started changing as his life started changing. He started going through things, people started dying, so on and so forth. But he was the first person that I saw in a video making, content creating space that was like, I'm gonna take my pain and broadcast it in a way that can possibly help somebody else. And it was weird as he started to change in a sense of it was no longer about the jokes, it was no longer just about the girls, but it was about life. It was about perspective. It was about, you know, how do you deal with death? How do you grieve? How do you come to the fact or reality that, hey, what I thought my purpose was has now changed 10 years into what I've created. Where do I go? You know, and then watching that and then having your own creations as you go on, you're like, damn,
Yeah,
it does change
yeah, it
because
does. Yeah.
it's no longer, one, what you thought it would be, but two, you're not the only person who has a say in what it can be at that point. Other people start to add a little bit of input, and then as you said, you have kids, so then you're like, all right, well, you know, do I want, what do I want my kid to listen to about me talking about 10 years from now, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, or whatever the situation is. So I think that with that, it's just how we kind of go about what we want out of life, but then at the same time, who we want people to kind of remember us as. And there was
Mm.
another quote that I got introduced to where it says, "You die twice. You die the first time when your physical body leaves Earth, and then you die the second time where your name is uttered for the last time." You know, and that's pretty much saying the last time somebody speaks your name is when you truly leave this world, because that's as
Yeah.
far as your impact went.
Oh, I was about to say, but okay. So that's kind of scary, but on the same time, I mean, it's scary, but at the same time, it's like there's a lot of people that's named. That's really hard for your name to completely be exhausted.
It is.
Like, I mean, that's inspiring for a lot of people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
at bare minimum, you get a park named after you, and they say, "Who's that?" They say your name, so it
Mm-hmm.
still lives on. Or
Mm-hmm.
family, or pictures. I mean, you got.
Mm-hmm.
I think over time, history erases the terrible people.
Mm-hmm.
Your monuments get taken down and all that stuff. But like, I think there's names that still live like quite on for, like
Forever.
Alexander the Great or something. You still say his name, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Or Attila the Hun, or so,
Mm-hmm.
So
People are named after him though.
yeah,
Think about
so
like.
I think that second death is really, really hard
Mm-hmm.
unless you really, I would say, die super, super alone, the first
Mm-hmm.
death, and people don't even know who you are, which is
Mm-hmm.
sad. Because I know there's some people that do experience that,
Mm-hmm.
that people don't know where they are and all that. But I mean, I think in an optimistic way, like that does. I'm thinking a more optimistic way. That's like really empowering. Like
Mm-hmm.
that can make you say, like, I can do a lot to have my second name left. My second death
Yeah.
be very long,
Yeah.
like hundreds of years long.
Yeah. And you kind of have to, because it pushes you to say, okay, well, I think sometimes we get into that numbers game of, I have to reach 1 million people, I have to do this, I have to do that, so on and so forth. But what I've recognized is it really only takes one person for you to live forever in that realm,
Because they'll pass it
because
down.
they'll pass it down, because eventually they're going to look back and somebody's going to be like, yo, who's the person who inspired,
Mm-hmm.
what you kind of think about and stuff like that. And then they'll be like, Phil. because he said this on this episode, or when I was at school and I was struggling, I went into his office and he gave me that inspiration, or just whatever it is. It's funny because even looking at it now, like the episode that I start season 3 with, you're in the description box, link into your stuff, because I referenced that text we had where you had told me like, hey, just enjoy the moment, like you did something good type stuff, right? But it's just but it's funny because it was like in that moment where I'm speaking about all this, I'm like, wow, this was a moment where somebody told me like, hey, just appreciate it for a second, right?
Yeah,
Because that's one of my biggest struggles, where it's like, all right, on to the next thing. So when you said that, I was like, damn,
that's timely.
super timely, super timely, so it's just
Yeah, it does. It only
the
takes one person.
it
It
only
takes
takes one
one
person.
person. I believe that. And it takes,
Mhm.
like you said, that one person put it in a book.
Yeah,
And then that book is read. I mean, you're right. Like,
yeah.
yo, that really blew my mind because that it does speak to community. It speaks
Mm-hmm.
to leaving, I think, bigger than that, a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to be a crazy legacy. And this is
Mm-mm.
something I need to really boil down to is that, I'm the king of doing too much and trying to like think of like I am. And I'm always, I need to think about the why a lot. Like the why,
Mm-hmm.
am I doing this to serve myself and
Mm-hmm.
boost my ego, or am I serving it to help others? But
Mm-hmm.
then I think at the end of the day too, is that the more and more I focus on service to others,
Mm-hmm.
by happenstance, a byproduct
Mm-hmm.
is that it'll make sure that I just definitely want to leave something, not just for me, but for my boys. That
Mm-hmm.
name part, that's so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if anything, and so what you just said kind of reaffirms that. Like, just focus on helping other people, focus on being good, being kind,
Mm-hmm.
doing things like that, and I'll make sure that my name and my boys' names and the people around me, my
Yeah.
community,
Mm-hmm.
live on that second death for a long
Yeah.
time.
For a long time.
I think that's as much as we can ask for.
It's more. Honestly, I've come like it's more. Because a lot of people just ask for a good life. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
if you get to the point where that good life has sent you further than what you could have ever imagined, then you've lived tenfold. You've really taken everything that you could have used in your tools and given it to somebody else, and they took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
The motivation, the empowerment, the affirmation that can just come from somebody hearing you say one thing.
Mhm.
You deserve it, you're worth it. One thing I like to tell people is that they're enough, because I realize that a lot of people don't hear that. Like what you're doing, like it's easy to look at Instagram or one of those places and get caught into the chase. It's easy to go on the internet and type in a Hollywood house and see what you don't necessarily have, but it's hard to really look at what you have and say it's enough. And the song Love Yours by J. Cole was one of the
Oh,
first times that I
yes.
really was like, damn, like, nah, this is it. This is the message I needed to hear.
Yes. Yeah. Cole Stanton here. I'm definitely a big Cole Stanton. I
Yeah,
love that song.
so and he even says it's the best song that he wrote. So from that standpoint, it kind of tells you like teaching people and giving people a form of acceptance is really what can determine whether or not they're going to even think of their life as good or bad. And get to the point where they're not necessarily chasing this or that, but they're just doing because it's genuine, because they wanted to get together, because they wanted to make good memories, because they wanted to have some fun. But it's not there's no real other gain outside of that.
No. Well, you dropped some gems. I think that we might have to do a part 2 someday.
Yeah, for sure,
But
for sure.
in person too, when it's say, I got my equipment. We were supposed to do
Okay.
that one podcast. Remember that me, you, Jermaine,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
me,
yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah.
Jermaine, and Hamed. It was supposed to be like a whole round table.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
2 sigmas and 2 alphas.
Yeah,
We might have to do that again. I definitely gonna link that up.
for sure.
So I lied. I didn't say shout outs and plugs, but this is the part of the show you probably listen called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first? I'll go first.
I can go first.
Right.
What do you believe the biggest change you saw in yourself has been?
When? What's the time period of the change?
Um,
COVID 2020.
mm,
Since I was graduated college. What?
from the moment that you can kind of look at as the lowest point in your life to now.
Okay. Well, quite honestly, one of the most stressful times I had was actually right after I started my job, 2018.
Mm,
Really dark time. I was really stressed. Second kid coming,
mm-hmm,
new job at Mason, which I didn't think I was good at. Imposter syndrome
mm-hmm,
times 1,000, all that stuff.
mm-hmm,
And just it was just a mess. It was a total mess.
mm-hmm,
And that I would probably put that in my bottom, bottom three moments of life, right? Like the
mm-hmm,
lowest, right? And the bounce back from that was ridiculous. As in, right after I made it through that storm, counseling, all kinds of
mm-hmm,
things, uh, I had probably one of the best years of my professional career ever,
mm,
which was 2019, a full year. Um, and I think it was because in that lowest moment, I started to really study. I was like, yo, beyond all this stuff, I need to figure out what can I do to make myself feel better. And
mm-hmm,
so I started really reading about well-being, and
mm-hmm,
I started practicing gratitude and using the journal
mm-hmm,
and thinking about the random acts of kindness. I mean, I literally just, and and then I just really started to start coming into my own at Mason, and started
mm-hmm,
getting involved with students and find a purpose. And so what I learned about myself was that there's a few things. One, even at the lowest moment,
mm-hmm,
it wasn't permanent. There's no permanence.
mm,
There's probably going to be, like I said, this year, like it was another roller coaster. Like I'm going to have a really good year and I'm going to have
yeah,
another terrible year. This is not going to be the end. Something
yeah,
bad's going to happen in my life, right? That's just life,
mm-hmm,
someone may pass away or something very sad.
mm-hmm,
And so knowing that nothing is permanent, nothing is always good forever, nothing is always
mm-hmm,
bad forever.
mm-hmm,
That's one of the lessons I learned.
mm,
One, also I learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought I was, and I
mm,
have a good, uh, I think the lowest moments also bring out what I call your tribe, your people, like it's
mm-hmm,
your friend filter, right? It's
mm-hmm.
easy to have your friends when your times are good. Everyone else says that, but your true people come through it's
When
like a
the bad
filter.
times.
Like when you're having the worst time ever,
Yeah,
the people rise to the top, your real tribe.
yeah,
Luckily, I definitely knew that my wife was already in that tribe, but
mm-hmm,
my best friend Hillard and all that stuff. So one, nothing is permanent.
mm-hmm,
Two, even at adversity or really tough times,
mm-hmm,
your real people come through,
mm,
and they're there for you. And I think the third thing I realized that too is that now that I know what that lowest moment felt like,
mm-hmm,
I have more empathy for other people that are going through
mm,
depression and anxiety,
mm-hmm.
so that I'm able to help. I like the term wounded healer,
Okay.
meaning like I have wounds and scars, but I'm
Mm-hmm,
offering to heal someone else because I
mm-hmm,
know what it feels like to have those wounds.
mm,
So, I think that you're supposed to go through hard times. One, to build up your own empathy and resilience, build
yeah,
up that muscle. Two, it lets you know who's really got your back. And then three, it's not going to be forever. You're going to bounce back. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I'm telling you right now, this is, I put on my Negro Damas hat. 2021, 2021 and 2022 or whatever, maybe 2 or 3 years after this, the bounce back is going to be ridiculous.
Mm.
As in, like, this is a quite challenging. This is probably one of a lot of people's worst year.
Yeah.
Like all around health, socially,
Mm-hmm.
like worst year. When things start to open out, things get normal, not normal, but with technology, the bounce back is going to be crazy. Like work's going to be different. People are going to be working different.
Yeah.
Using technology different.
Yeah.
I think people are going to value friendships, at least for that 1 year.
Yeah.
People are going to hold a lot of value in seeing each other again,
mm-hmm.
and just being kind and hugging and all that. It's going to be the bounce back. I think that there's always, it's a roller coaster. Think about that. 1 year someone passed away, the next year they win a championship.
Mm-hmm.
Come on now. Look at that. The Lakers, they lost Kobe.
Yeah.
They won the NBA finals.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's a sign. I'm just saying, like, usually out of very bad situations, something good pops up out of nowhere.
Pops up for sure.
Or or bounces back, it's a rebound effect. It's cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's what's it kind of like, not physics, but what is it? Equal or greater reaction or something like that.
Newton's first law: every action
Yeah,
has
you know
an
what I'm talking
equal or
about.
greater reaction. Yeah,
It does, even the negative, like
Mm-hmm.
bounce back. So I think that's what I've learned through adversity. That's what I learned about myself. That's what I learned about reframing my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Would I want to go through that again? Probably not. But I mean, it's one of those things. I'm trying to be honest with myself. Like, you want to say yes because it taught me who I am, but then it wasn't the best.
Sure.
It wasn't the best time ever. Yeah. But I think that's definitely what I've learned about myself from a very tough situation.
That's dope. I rock with that for sure.
That's crazy. I'm glad you thought about it. All right, so we're talking about leadership. Just three, your top three, like whatever first association, top three leaders, and not like, okay, top three leaders for you. One, how they led, and that's inspiring. And two, which aspect of their leadership do you try to embody for yourself? So
okay,
kind of like that for the three.
First leader is probably going to be Nelson Mandela. For me, perseverance in a time where you're being wrongfully persecuted, where you are just not necessarily given the right to either express yourself, to exist in your community. You've been exiled, you've been, just everything that could possibly be put on you to tell you to quit, and you're just like, I'm just not going to. So that's something that I feel like I take with me. So him for sure. I would say Maya Angelou would definitely be number two. And she embodies intellect and respect to the highest I've never seen anybody embody it higher than that. And respect in a manner of just, kind of how she talks about how we should look at our elders, and how we should look at the people who came before us, and why we should give that respect even when we don't necessarily feel like we've gotten it, why we should take that time to really extend the olive branch over and over and over again and not give up on those people. And then she was one of the first people that showed me that, being Black and smart is not a bad thing. And that was just one of the biggest, dopest things. And then I would say third leader, this one was not really world renowned, but it's my homegirl, Janae Dixon. She showed me what it meant to be empathetic, what it meant to be vulnerable, and why that was important. And the grace that she's able to give people, the level of atmosphere and room that she creates for redemption, and just allowing you to kind of exist at your worst and then pushing you to get better so that you can exist at your best. Like, without her really doing that, outside of like my immediate family kind of being there for me, like without her taking that time to do that, like I don't know where I would be. You know what I'm saying? Like that, she's been a real dope friend to me. So between friendship and just offering a level of understanding, empathy, and understanding, how you can come off or how you can kind of express certain things to people and make them feel a way even when you're not trying to, So definitely her for sure.
I love it. Well, this has been a pleasure, man. This is dope. You dropped some gems. I took mad notes. I'm gonna start a new thing now. I might throw some quotes in there when I look at this next episode when it comes out. Probably some gems. And you're such a a wise person. Maybe we all make mistakes. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't, can't be with the oldest and coldest, but it's okay. No, but this has been a pleasure. I'm so glad that we finally did this.
Me too.
Actually, I'm so glad that you were assertive. We didn't let this go because we definitely went back and forth.
Yeah.
And we're definitely going to do this again. I'm proud of you in the space that you're doing. Definitely kept up with your show, jump in every now and then, listen.
Mhm.
But also just seeing how you navigate not just your podcast, but just yourself.
Mhm.
Like I said, I text you immediately. I said, I see how you just carry yourself.
Yeah.
I definitely was very impressed, and I'm always impressed.
I appreciate that.
For the listeners, it's the part of the show. Shout outs and plugs. Show love to anyone you want to show love to. Shout out anyone, and then plugs. Plugs are particularly things that I'm going to put in the show notes. I'm writing it right now. Put in the show notes so that people can follow you or support you or whatever you're doing. So your
Okay.
shout outs and plugs.
Okay. First shout out my boy Trey. He's at Trinity 16, doing the workouts and everything else like that. Keep doing your thing. Shout out my boy Lou Alexander with his music. Y'all go follow him at Lou Alex Official. Check out his saxophone, check out his original music. Shout out my brother Young KP on the percussion. Shout out my boy Jermaine. My man's been doing the thing in the podcast world. It was one of the biggest inspirations for me to get off of my ass and do the podcast and stuff. Shout out my boy Robbie. We just featured him on the season finale of my last episode, and he was also a big influence. Shout out my mom and my pops, because you know they keep a roof over my head for right now, and they also push me to be better every day. There's so many people I could shout out, honestly, but if you know me, then you know it's all love. From the bottom of my heart, you know it's love. And shout out Phil, you know what I'm saying, Philip Wilkinson, you know what I'm saying, allowing me to come on the podcast, you know, and drop gems, as you say, but also, you know, just always creating a space to, you know, have great discussion and allowing people to kind of use their voice and the power that their voice can have, you know.
Excellent. And then plugs, plug away.
I mean, I plugged a lot. Yeah, Lou.
No, yourself.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, y'all can go check out my podcast After Sunset. On there, you'll know me as the host of Inalat, YNALAYT. It actually stands for You're Never As Low As You Think.
Yo, that's what I was like. What is that?
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? I was like, yeah, I literally I wasn't even remotely close to figuring that out. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad. I love it. I learned something new, everyone, on the podcast. I love it. I thought it was some new young thing. I was just so out of it.
It's an acronym. It was I found the acronym at a very low point in my life, and it was just something that ever since I kind of got it, I've been going with it, and just really pushing people to understand the way you think about certain things and the way that you kind of consume certain media can really change your outlook on a lot. And my mindset changes as the day changes. So I kind of, you know, use the show to connect with people and to give people different perspectives. So, you know, when you have the time, check that out for sure. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at After Sunset PDX. And that's about it.
Can you do that? Can you say the acronym again? I love it.
Inalat, YNALAYT. You're never as low as you think.
Never as low as you think. I love that.
Yeah. So
I love that. That's great. I'm glad you actually told me what that was.
I
literally never got that. I love that. Well, everyone, please go follow along. Follow all that. Support this young brother. Support his podcast. Definitely part of the podcast community. Definitely need more Black voices, young Black voices taking over the airwaves. So please support him. And then, you know, hey, I'm already going to put him on spotlight. If you ever want to start a podcast, you can holler at either one of us.
That's a
like
fact.
I said, someone helped us along the way. And we, like I said, we want more voices in this space to share just positive vibes and good energy and also drop gems. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your family and friends. It's Positive Philter on all platforms. And you can leave a voicemail at 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. That's the podcast hotline. Spreading positivity is a movement, and we're out.
All righty. Thank you, brother.
Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page. Spreading positivity a movement. Thanks for listening.